Item 3, declaration of interest. Is there any councillor that has any interest that they need to declare for the proceedings today? Thank you. Confirmation of minutes, item 4. We have the minutes of the 24th of August to confirm. I will move that. Can I have a seconder, please? Councillor Simpson. All those in favour, please say aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Petitions, there are none. We come now to item 6 on the agenda, public input. There is one request that has been declined on the basis that the matter has already been decided and Council has no further decision-making power. There is one aspect of that request that has been referred to Environment and Community as the committee so that they can hear it if they wish as they hold the delegation. We have 4 requests today from members of the public, and all of you are very welcome. Thank you for taking the time to be here. I'll do it in the order that I have. The first is John Newsom to talk on the governance framework review. Is John here? Yep. John is here. Yep. John, please come to the table. Can I remind members of the public that there is a 4-minute bell, which means that you've got 60 seconds left to wind up. There will then be a short period of time for councillors to ask any questions. But we will keep strictly to that time limit because of the circumstances of today. John, welcome all the way from Waiheke, and the time is now yours.
Cost me $18 to get here, Mr. Mayor. Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk about my topic, which is to contextualise Waiheke's continuing dissatisfaction with the administration from Auckland that we've had since 1990, prior to your decision today on the pilot for devolution of some authority to the local board. I just wanted to explain this because I wanted councillors in particular to know that it's not about not loving Auckland. It's about something entirely different. Our community's been dissatisfied over 2 key groups of issues, as I see them. First, the feeling of disempowerment over the development and then the application of our district plan. The district plans, or in your case the unitary plan, our case the unitary plan, are absolutely fundamental to the role of local authorities. And if a community is continually feeling frustrated about both the content of and the application of the district plan, it really is a continuing sore. I'm told that 80% of the submissions to the development of the current district plan for the Hauraki Gulf and Islands were basically ignored or watered down. So we're very unhappy with the plan in the first instance, but insofar as it's there, and I've led on this on the local board for the last 4 years, resource consent applications are routinely given a considerable degree of laxity in our view. They're cutting across a whole lot of things like wetlands, iconic sites are being built on in ways that we don't like at all. We've had massive decisions about marinas and other major applications of that kind, which is continuously seeing us fundraise to go to court. We're in court right now on 2 issues, one of which you created by making unwittingly making a decision on regional policies which wiped out our rural-urban boundary when nobody asked for that to be done, and the High Court has since declared that it should not have been done because nobody submitted on it. We've got an Environment Court case on that now pending, and there's one going on for the Kennedy Point Marina. This is the sort of thing that's happening constantly. And the community has gone as far as, what's the term, civil disobedience in order to express its dissatisfaction on a number of occasions. We fear the development of, or the incorporation of the unitary plan on the back of the sorts of decisions that we see from planners and council routinely. The second area of concern is the perceived high cost of operations on Waiheke. Despite our very low level of infrastructure, we don't have any of the 3 waters apart from a little bit of stormwater, for example, and our roads are, to be frank, well, they're a disgrace really, and they're spent, a lot of money is being spent on them nevertheless. So the poor quality of work and the resistance to community input over decisions and prioritisation. You're trying to get plans out of Auckland Transport, for example, a 10-year plan. You'd think that'd be a logical thing, and even the CEO of Auckland Transport at one point agreed that's a good thing to do, but we have had total resistance to building one. And now just recently, some of you may have seen our new supermarket in Ostend. We have asked for a plan for that whole vicinity because traffic is now quite a considerable issue there. We are totally resistant on such issues. I hope you've been given a chart of comparative costs that we prepared in the context of our, frankly, our secession bid with the local government commission. I'll just give it to you as an example of the research we've done about what goes on in local government in communities, rural communities like ours around the country. You know, well, I don't need to tell you, we are separate from Auckland in every physical sense. All the services that connect this community to Auckland are privately owned. The ferries, the power, the telecoms, even the wharves were paid for by our community through the taxes on our wharf tax, on our fares to and from Auckland. The costs we face on this island are shown to be $35.5 million as determined by the Morrison Lowe analysis. That is hugely more than any comparable council revenue, nevertheless, than any of those councils apart from one on the chart here, and it's considerably larger. I deliberately put it in because it is an example of expenditures less but revenues a bit more. We think that the costs of running running things on Waiheke simply are not appropriate to our scale of operations. It's difficult for massive institutions like Auckland Transport to deliver on Waiheke at appropriate costs. And I'll leave it there.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you for that submission. Just check out, are there councillors that would like to ask questions about this? We've debated this issue over time, but if there are any questions, happy to take any questions now. Deputy Mayor Bill Cashmore.
Good to see you, John.
Thank
Do
you,
your
Bill.
figures here for the other councils besides the figurehead for Waiheke, does that include regional rates?
It doesn't, but
does
they'd
not?
be no more than 5 to 10% depending on the region.
Okay. And the figure for expenditure here, does that include transport subsidies?
Yes, it's total. Transport in the $35.5 million is about 11.3.
Yeah, thank you.
Just a question from me, John. What percentage of permanent residents on Waiheke would be working or studying in Auckland? Do you have that off the top of your head?
We have to guesstimate it because getting figures are very hard around this stuff, but we guesstimate somewhere between 1,600 and 2,000 regular commuters. And frankly, I don't know the numbers of students, but it's probably... Any idea? No. There's about 5,500 secondary school students, so I'm guessing it's something less than 100.
Okay. Great. Thank you very much. Any further
I should
questions?
say, Mr Mayor, there's also a huge number of people going to Waiheke every morning to go and work over there and bring their money back to Auckland.
We love Waiheke, John.
I know, and that's not what this is about.
No, I understand your introductory comment. Well, look, thank you very much, John. Really appreciate you taking the time to come over to the mainland. At least it's not as bad as the Chathams. They talk about when they leave the Chathams to come, they say we're going to New Zealand as if it's a different country. Anyway,
I wish.
thank you very much. We have a resolution, and I'll move it, that we receive and note the public input presentation from John Mewson regarding the Governance Framework Review, and to thank him for his attendance. Do we have a seconder for that, please? Councillor John Watson. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. To the contrary, no. Carried. Now, my pleasure to introduce a group of Auckland primary and secondary principals led by John Fair, Byron Bentley, Malcolm Milner, Liz Horgan. All very welcome. Please come to the table, and the time is now yours. Thank you for taking the time out. I know how busy your jobs are as principals, so we appreciate you being with us today. Right.
Thank you.
You're leading off?
Thank you, Your Worship and councillors. Liz, of course, stands out. No need to introduce her. Malcolm Milner, Byron Bentley, and I'm John.
And I should add, John, you're from Mount Eden Normal, Byron, you're from Maclean's College, Malcolm from Balmoral, and Liz St Joseph's. I was going to say St Joe's, very casual, in Otahuhu. Welcome.
I can tell you, Phil, that we are looking for some divine intercession today, hence the presence of Liz. We're here to address a crisis that we feel is not being appreciated in Wellington. The crisis relates to teacher supply and teacher quality in Auckland. Our intention is to apprise you of something, a situation that is going to get worse and will definitely impact on the future of Auckland youngsters. We speak on behalf of primary and secondary principals in Auckland and the wider region. This matter is of particular importance to Auckland, but it may relate to other areas of the country as well, particularly in a secondary sense. Basically, we are faced with a situation where we don't have enough applicants for jobs. The applicants that do apply are of a descending quality, and there is a pending issue. Now, in my own case, at the end of last year, we lost 9 teachers. So we're running 34 classes, 9 teachers is quite a significant proportion. 6 of those left Auckland because they could not afford to live here. They have gone to the regions. 2 years of really hard professional development has gone off out of Auckland, and I have to say that it was a very, very stressful time in my career to try and appoint 9 new teachers. Now, 3 of those went on promotion, 6 went because they couldn't survive in Auckland. I've replaced them, but I've had to replace 5 of the 9 positions with a teacher who is in their first year of service. The quality of experienced applicants for the positions was very, very low. Now, we don't have pressure points like Byron does in relation to physics and maths and other aspects of the curriculum, but generally we are just finding that the pool in Auckland of primary teachers is drying up. Now, we have, the touch on my leg then was to tell me I'm 2 minutes, nothing else.
Thanks for clarifying.
Okay, all right.
Could have been the divine intervention.
I should have been sitting next to Liz. Yeah. The issue we have is that the Ministry of Education and the current Minister of Education, and indeed the previous one, will just not acknowledge that we've got an issue here. We are banging our heads against a brick wall, and in desperation, in a way, we're approaching you as an independent body to give us a hand to try and address this.
Councillors, at secondary school level, we reflect a lot of what John has been talking about, but we've also got the problem that we're an ageing workforce, that the average age of secondary school teachers in the city and across New Zealand is in the mid-50s, so we're seeing an awful lot of retirements. We're not getting enough graduates coming in from New Zealand universities into teaching. No way are they filling the gaps by hundreds. And we have the other problem, of course, is the salaries, which is the major issue, not keeping pace with the cost of living in the city. And we also have had for years relied on the UK market for our teachers in the main, particularly the specialist science and mathematics teachers, and increasingly subjects like English and geography, and that's drying up as well, because they look at the salary range here in New Zealand and they look at the cost of rental and or buying property in Auckland. It puts them off as well. There is another major problem looming, and that is the all of us are reliant on the recruitment of international students, fee-paying students, for survival. That has been a fact for many years. And along with the problems I've just been talking about, we're going to reach a decline in that area too if we're not careful, because if they do not get specialist teaching in our schools, they will leave. They will evaporate very quickly and leave us in a terribly parlous situation. Currently, you'll have better figures than I do currently, but I'm well aware that the education industry in Auckland's worth over $1 billion, and certainly in secondary schools contributes. Just in our little neck of the woods over in Bucklands Beach, we turn over $15 million a year. 10 of that goes out into the community, 5 into salaries, and we employ 28 teachers alone just with that money. That will all disappear. This is the worst situation I've seen in my 24 years as a principal, and quite frankly something needs to be done, and we're here to ask you to lobby whoever is the new government for immediate action. Major reform is required.
Thank you very much, Byron. Malcolm or Liz, you're fine. I'll start with Councillor Fletcher, because she was instrumental in bringing you all to see me not so long ago. Chris, your first question.
Well, thank you very much for coming today, and I understand you represent a range of principals right across the Auckland region. You talk about a crisis in the future, but what is the situation right now in terms of vacancies in both secondary and primary schools?
Well, there's over 200 secondary positions at the moment. That'll get worse as we get towards the end of the year, and the retirements start to kick in, and the movements and promotion perhaps even out of the city. And excuse me, we've also got the problem of the communities of learning, which is supposed to bring schools together, very worthy cause. The trouble is that it's going to require in Auckland alone another at least 130 secondary school teachers to fill the gaps. So we are in a crisis situation right now.
Would it be possible for Liz to give a bit of an indication from where she is in Otahuhu, what the impact is further south?
I think, like anything, when you've got a policy that's failing, the poorer areas of Auckland probably suffer first. I know from colleagues in South Auckland that they are doubling up classes, senior management staff are covering classes. If it wasn't for some beginning teachers, the schools are existing on a number of beginning teachers, which while some of them are very good, it's no way to run a whole school. You've got to have experience. And the point I'd make about that is these are the children that are the most vulnerable children in our city. Education is the only pathway for them out of poverty. So if they don't get quality teachers in front of them, then the outlook for them individually as people is not as good as it should be, and also for us as a society, particularly in Auckland. So South Auckland's always struggled to get staffing because most teachers don't live in the area, so it's much harder to get them to travel the distance. I can't give you the exact figures, but all I know is around the APPA council table, colleagues report sort of real desperation at trying to fill positions, and particularly filling positions of more senior management, middle management, which are critical to the running of schools.
So supplementary to that, Mr.
Last supplementary, Councillor, please.
Supplementary being that we're doing our part in terms of trying to work with the Ministry of Education to ensure, with the huge population growth that's going to surge into the south, that there are sufficient numbers of schools. But what you're telling us today, I'm hearing, is that even with the physical infrastructure being built, we're not going to have the social infrastructure to support it.
Correct.
Thank you. Councillor Quacks.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to ask the group if they are aware that teachers are not the only group that are facing this very serious problem. Nurses, fire personnel, and others who are so vital to our community are now also facing issues around the very high housing costs in Auckland. And the fact that other cities that follow the same kind of land restriction policies as Auckland, around the world, are facing similar shortages of police teachers in their area. Are you aware of that and the consequences of what we have done over the years and what that has done to our community?
It's probably taking you a little bit outside of your educational expertise, but have a crack at it if you'd
I
like.
suppose that may be the problem, but I suppose we can report on what's actually happening within our sector, and I think that's what we are saying. And we're in the sector because we believe in the future of our society through children. And what we are saying really is this is our social infrastructure. We are our link where everyone attends in the community, and we do have a commitment to that community. And what we're saying is we want help from you to help us make those communities thriving, healthy and strong.
Thank you. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Your Worship. Tēnā rā koutou katoa, and tēnā koe, Liz, it's good to catch up with you again. Look, my question is, do you know the percentages of the low decile school in the areas, in the poorest areas? Do you know the percentage of the low decile schools in parts of South Auckland and West Auckland?
Well, I couldn't give the exact percentage, but I know most of the South Auckland schools will be decile 1, 2, maybe 3, predominantly 1 and 2, and parts of West Auckland. I don't know West Auckland so well. I've taught in South Auckland for over 40 years, so I know that area well, and I know the impact of lack of teachers in an area like that. Yep.
Thank you. Councillor John Watson.
Thank you. Just a quick question. Am I correct in assuming that what we're hearing from you here today is something structural? It's not the usual cyclical ups and downs of demand and teacher training, and that this is going to be a reality looking out into the future, and that some of the things that we've heard, like housing on school land and whatnot, is just not going to cut it in any shape or form. Is that a reasonable summation of the outlook going forward?
Yeah, the outlook going forward is terribly bleak because we're not training enough teachers. There's not enough New Zealand graduates coming into New Zealand schools. That's the number one problem, and all the other problems just exacerbate that really. So we're on a downward spiral unless something immediate is done by Her Majesty's government. It's going to continue down that downward spiral. And if you've got children and grandchildren in schools, you should be very worried.
Thank you. Councillor Fesso-Collins.
Kia ora, Mr Mayor. I used to lecture at the School of Education at Laidlaw College, and one of the key things that we were interested in is that the interaction that teachers had with their students. I'm interested to know what you believe is the impact of the heavy outward flow of teachers on student achievement.
Well, from a point of view of continuity, I'll just attack one of those. On any one day in terms 2 and 3 in Auckland, primary sector and intermediate sector, upwards of 400 to 500 relievers would be needed. Now, those relievers have now gone because they've been assimilated into the workforce because there's no other pool. Now, there is some schools, 53% of the schools in June, primary, reported that they had 5 or 6 vacancies, not just 1 or 2. Now, Auckland is going to be a city where its education service will be full of shared positions. You won't have a teacher for a class. It'll be shared. And, that's just one issue. It's not a good thing for kids to have a person for 2 days and a person for 3. So just in terms of continuity of learning, rapport with students, welfare of students, it just makes the job much harder. That's just one aspect.
And we know the most vulnerable kids are the kids that are most affected by those changes.
Okay, I have 2 other calls, and then I'm going to close it at that because we have to get on. Councillor Pennyhouse.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, and I may suggest a bit of a way forward, so I'll pose it as a question. Would it be useful if we set up a working party with a couple of experienced education counsellors like Councillor Watson and Councillor Fesso-Collins to work with the Principals Association to structure up a very clear plan of what the problem is,
what's needed and what the advocacy to the incoming government of whatever variety, would that be useful? And secondly, Mr Mayor, on your behalf, and I haven't quite talked about this yet, but picking up the issue of key worker housing, is it useful for us to be working on a project around key worker housing to deal with the issue of short and medium-term rental for some of our teachers in the first instance?
It's yes and yes.
Yes, absolutely.
Absolutely, affirmative. We are getting no action, not even short-term action, from the ministry.
Okay. Can I suggest, Mr Mayor, that we pick that up?
We certainly should have a look at that, and we can come back to you. That might be a way in which we channel your concerns through to the incoming government, whoever they may be. So thank you very much for that suggestion, Councillor. Last question from Councillor Desley Simpson.
Oh, I can leave it. I was just going to ask you, you're obviously mentioning that you're struggling getting teachers being trained, New Zealand teachers being trained. There is obviously a migrant population coming in of overseas teachers. Is that working well for you?
No, it's not, because we're not getting enough of them.
They've dried up.
Thank you. I think I will invite Councillor Fletcher to move the recommendation, just to say usually we limit to 3 questions. There is an immense amount of interest in the concerns that you have, and while we don't directly govern educational matters, we do have an input into housing matters, and as we discussed privately, we're trying to do that through the Mayoral Housing Task Force to try to address the wider problem, because if it's affecting professional people like teachers, we know that it's having a devastating impact on lower income people who are struggling to survive in the community. So I'll ask Councillor Fletcher to move the resolution.
Mayor, I wonder if you would indulge me in the recommendations. I believe that this should be part of a package of measures that should be provided to the incoming government. So I'd like to go one step further than is being proposed here, that some advocacy, formal advocacy from Auckland Council, this material be put to the incoming government.
I'm happy to take that on board. I think we can do that as part of our housing responsibility, because we will be focusing in that briefing to the incoming ministers on housing and using teachers as an example, and you've given us a ton of evidence there. We will build that into our what we call the BIM, briefing to incoming ministers.
Mr Chairman, I think that there is an issue in terms of advocacy. It's not our core responsibility, but there is an issue of advocacy for the social infrastructure to ensure Auckland's effectiveness. So I really would like to see this done formally, if possible.
It will be part of our formal submission. I'm happy to take your suggestion.
Thank you.
on board.
On that basis, I'm happy to move these recommendations.
Been moved. We've got a seconder for that. Councillor Penny Holz. It's been moved and seconded. All those in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. Carried. And thank you very much, both for your submission today, which was very clear and compelling, but thank you for the work you do in our communities as well. We really appreciate that.
Thank you.
Right, thank you.
Thank you.